Hi everyone, I'm Lee Meagle. I'm the editor here at the Web Host Industry Review, and I would like to welcome you all to another WHIR Webinar. Today's session is called Open Source or Turnkey Cloud, What's the Right Approach for Service Providers? And it's going to feature a presentation from John Vlachik and Ben Bridger of Cloud Spectator, as well as Kostin Metroweli of OnApp. I will let everyone introduce themselves more thoroughly in a moment, but before we go any further, I wanted to just take care of a couple of housekeeping type items. First of all, for questions, we are going to save a few minutes at the end of the session for your questions. However, you can feel free to submit them through the webinar software throughout the session using the functions, and I will keep an eye on those during the whole thing. As far as actually putting the questions to our presenters, we're going to leave that until the end of the session. If you do ask a question and it doesn't get answered either because excuse me, we run out of time, or maybe it's a bit too specific, rest assured we will have a record of the questions and who asked them, and somebody will reach out to you with an email after the fact. Or if you have a question you'd prefer to ask outside of a public forum like this, there will be some contact info on screen later, so if you want to reach out that way, you can certainly do that. As always, there will be a video archive of the webinar available. If you want to revisit a slide or a certain portion of the presentation, or just watch the whole thing again, share it with somebody else, it'll be in the archives at thewhir.com/webinars as of early next week, and it'll be there alongside of our other great past webinars, so definitely worth a look. Without any further ado, I will turn things over to John and Ben. Guys, do you want to introduce yourselves and we can get things started?
Sure, thanks, Kostin. So I'm Benny Bridger, and I'm a senior analyst at Cloud Spectator, and I'm here with John Vlachik. I'm another senior analyst and co-founder of Cloud Spectator. And so the webinar that we're going to be going over today, as Kostin mentioned, is the difference between the open source and the turnkey cloud, and really more specifically the total cost of ownership analysis that Cloud Spectator did when comparing the OnApp Cloud versus OpenStack. And we're going to try and keep this short and sweet, so I really think we can, without further ado, we can get started. So just a basic high-level overview of the two products, and it's important to keep in mind that these are very different in nature. So when you look at OnApp, you're getting the turnkey solution, you're getting the feature-rich, you're getting all that you need out of the box. All the support is included, whereas with OpenStack, it's very basic in nature. It's a very raw product out of the box. However, it has a highly flexible and configurable nature to it, whereas that flexibility is really dependent and reliant upon expertise. And we'll get into sort of the costs and sort of how that plays out in the total cost of ownership analysis in a few slides. So again, really the fundamental difference to remember here is you have the complete turnkey solution with OnApp versus the highly configurable open source solution with OpenStack. So when we did our total cost of ownership analysis for OnApp and OpenStack, we used these 5 basic deployments. You can call a 48-core deployment a small deployment, and then all the way up to a 10,000-core deployment supplemented by 20 clouds. A few of the core assumptions that we made in this analysis, more specifically and more importantly, with OpenStack, there is no in-house expertise, so you have to outsource your support. The hardware costs for the two providers are equal. And then this entire total cost of ownership analysis is over a 3-year period. So those are the basic assumptions that we have here. So when we look at the total cost of ownership and the basic components of it specific to the two products, going around the chart here, you have the implementation of the software, you have the upgrades and support necessary, you have the Open LDAP and monitoring, which is OpenStack specific, you have the license, which is actually OnApp specific, you have the metering and billing software, and then the technical support. So these 6 together comprise the TCO components that we did for our analysis. And when we look at OpenStack specifically, these 3, the technical support, the implementation, and the upgrade and support, these are the fundamental mechanisms that really enable OpenStack to run efficiently and securely. Now, how fundamental are these to the entire cost of OpenStack? When you look at the total cost of ownership, these comprise 93% of the entire cost of OpenStack. And with OnApp, these 3 components individually all come with the turnkey solution. So in constructing the complete solution, really when you look at OnApp and what it provides out of the box, you're getting these 5 basic components. We can call them basic general components. You're getting these out of the box. Whereas with OpenStack, it's a conscious process to implement each one by one by one by one, all the way up to the billing software, which OnApp actually has it pre-integrated. Whereas with OpenStack, this is simply another piece of the puzzle. So when we talk about production ready and whether OpenStack is production ready, we're really talking about the time to market, how long it takes to implement. So we go a little further into implementation time. So basically how long it takes to get both solutions up and running. So the turnkey versus the open source. So assuming that the hardware is in place, with OnApp, you're looking at a 1 to 2 day deployment. So you can be implemented and up and running with OnApp in 1 to 2 days. So we might call that production ready. Whereas with OpenStack, even with the smallest deployment that we measured at a 48 core, you're looking at a 2-month minimum all the way up to 6 months just to implement the software from the beginning. So diving a little further into the costs and really the total cost of ownership analysis that we did, we start to put some numbers next to these figures. So if you look at the implementation costs, so solely, just for OpenStack, it requires a significant capital investment just to install the software primarily. So when you're looking at the smallest core deployment that we saw, we looked at 150K all the way up to 500K. And one of the things to keep in mind here is that over the first year, with the total cost of ownership for OpenStack, the implementation is going to comprise roughly half of the total cost. So just to implement in the first year will comprise about half of the entire cost of the OpenStack deployment. So the second component, which we mentioned, technical support. Now, because OpenStack is open source, the support needs to be outsourced, and as such, good support is absolutely vital if you're looking to implement and run OpenStack. So the fact of the matter is that you're looking at a 60K all the way up to a 240K annual charge just to keep systems well supported and to keep good support in-house. With OnApp, you're getting these features totally free. And the third important component to mention is the system upgrades. So with OpenStack, you're going to have to upgrade twice a year. And these upgrades are absolutely crucial to keeping your systems upgraded, so to speak. So when you're looking at, again, a small deployment, a 48-core deployment, you're looking at a 90K charge for 2 upgrades per year. And then all the way up to the monster deployment, up to 300K in total. And with OnApp, these upgrades are all installed at no extra cost. So we can see through the 3 components there, OnApp has them all covered for free, whereas with the OpenStack system, you're paying a pretty hefty fee. So where does this leave us in the big picture? Well, if you take a look at the 2 cost of ownership scenarios that we have here, you want to key your eyes to the year 1. So when you look at the implementation and support for OpenStack for both year 1 for the 504 and the 1,000-core deployment, you're looking at roughly half of your first year's costs are just in implementation and support alone. And then what that in turn does is your first year's total comprises, again, half of the overall 3-year total cost of analysis. So the upfront investment for OpenStack is significant. Whereas with OnApp, every single year, the only 2 components that you're paying for is the cost of the license and the cost of the metering and billing software. So it's important to distinguish between OnApp, which only has the 2 components that comprise the total cost, whereas with OpenStack, where you have the 4 there, including the implementation and support, which equals a significant amount of the overall cost. And bringing this all to sort of a ratio standpoint, we can see with the small deployment, a 48-core deployment, you have a 23.4x difference in cost just to deploy that small deployment. But as you can see, and as you go left to right, as the deployment increases in size, the ratios shrink just a little bit. But you'll notice even in the 10,000 core 20 cloud deployment, even though it's only a 1.3x ratio, you're still looking at about a 600K difference. So it's important to keep in mind that while with OpenStack you're getting a highly configurable solution, configuring that solution over time may not be the best cost-effective option. So, and if there are any other questions with regard to the total cost of analysis, the total cost of ownership analysis, feel free to send questions to contact@cloudspectator.com. We're absolutely willing and ready to get back to you as soon as possible, and we're looking forward to all of the great questions. And I think with that, we can hand it back off to Costin, I believe. And thank you all for listening.
Okay, thanks, guys. Costin, do you want to introduce yourself? I think made you the presenter there.
Thanks. Hi everyone, my name is Costin Metravelli. I'm Chief Commercial Officer at OnApp. I think that John and Ben gave a good overview of some of the total cost of ownership aspects of running an open source cloud management platform versus running a turnkey solution such as OnApp. What I wanted to do was to kind of take this a step further. So obviously, what we looked at just now was comparing like-for-like cloud management platform with cloud management platform. However, I think it's important to note that with any infrastructure as a service cloud deployment, there are always a set of additional services that need to be deployed and additional capabilities that need to be deployed in order to make the service truly successful today. And this is in a world where, as a cloud provider, we are competing with the likes of Amazon, who have the lion's share of the market. So we need to as a cloud provider community be looking at ways that we can address that that situation. So in order to do that, what I wanted to do was first look at what end customers are looking for in their cloud applications, because obviously that's what's important at the end of the day. And if we look at some of the common use cases for moving, some of the common use cases that are moving to cloud, which would be gaming companies, media companies, e-commerce, social media, and of course there are many others, software as a service, and so on. One of the reasons they're doing that is not only for the elasticity and cost benefits, but also for the fact that they're able to deliver to their global audience an instant, low latency, always-on capability that just works properly in whichever geography, on whatever device the end customer is using. Of course, the problem here is that most service providers are actually local and have limited scale, a small number of data centers, maybe one or a handful, a small number of locations, and a limited product set. And so that makes it really hard to compete with the likes of Amazon, who have that huge scale. If you want 1,000 servers, they can provision them. They have that reach. They have their 8 data centers worldwide and product breadth. Of course, the big problem for any service provider today is trying to match that infrastructure is simply extremely expensive from a Capex perspective. So obviously, the more servers, the more data centers, the more locations that one spins up, the more Capex you have to put behind the project, which is why it's so difficult to catch up with the likes of Amazon. But we believe that the future of cloud is federated. We think that this is the way that service providers are going to be able to meet the challenge that Amazon has provided head-on and beat them at that game. So we believe that pooling resources across service providers on a global basis is going to be the only way for service providers to compete in the new world of cloud providers. So that's what we're doing at OnApp. We're building the OnApp Cloud Federation. At the moment, OnApp, the OnApp customer base consists of 400 plus service providers. The OnApp CDN consists of over 100 points of presence, and we're distributed across more than 34 countries. We believe that by allowing this community of service providers to club together, share infrastructure and share capabilities, In other words, building the world's largest federated cloud, we'll be able to build something that is bigger and better than what Amazon is able to provide, and will meet more closely the needs of today's cloud applications. So, obviously, underlying all of this very importantly is a common platform. So this is based around the OnApp Cloud product that we've just taken a look at, the comparison between OnApp Cloud and OpenStack. However, it consists of other components as well. So OnApp has a couple of other products that integrate tightly with the OnApp Cloud product, and those are OnApp CDN, which is our federated content delivery network, and OnApp Storage, which is a new distributed storage system. So these provide the foundation for building that core set of cloud services that are essential to deliver a modern infrastructure as a service capability. We, of course, wrap all of that with open APIs and provide intuitive web and mobile, be it iOS or Android, mobile user interfaces that are all completely rebrandable, reskinnable for service providers in order to get them up and running as quickly as possible. That platform, crucially, is connected by a global marketplace. So this global marketplace allows service providers to buy and sell capacity on demand. So if you're a service provider that happens to have spare capacity in their environment, you can sell it on the OnApp marketplace. If you're a service provider that needs to expand into a new region, or you need more capacity in your own region that you just don't have today, then you can go to the marketplace, buy that capacity on demand, in a totally seamless way. So for buyers, it allows them to expand their reach. For sellers, it allows them to monetize their spare capacity, and OnApp sits in the middle, providing a broker service. The importance of that is that for buyers and sellers, they have a single agreement with OnApp. So there are no bilateral agreements that need to be reached between service providers, which makes the whole thing extremely easy to implement. By doing that, what that means is a service provider can get global scale, but without the costs. The reason for that is all of the infrastructure that is sold through this global marketplace is sold pretty much as a customer would buy cloud. It's on demand. So this is so for a service provider, you're able to buy that capability as and when you need it. You pay for what you use, and then you can give it back when you've finished with it. And what that means is you do not have this big upfront capex in order to offer a service in additional geographies. We believe that that provides a better alternative to what is possible through Amazon Web Services. Not only does it give you more choice, it gives you more scale. So where Amazon has 8 data centers, we're talking about hundreds of data centers. More reach, whereas Amazon is in 8 countries, we're talking about tens of countries. And more innovation, whereas Amazon has a fixed product set, what we're able to do is share an expanded product set that is built on by our complete community of cloud providers across the entire federation. So that is OnApp's vision for where we want to take the cloud market today. Now, what I wanted to do was also take a quick look at take a quick deep dive into some of the OnApp products, just to give you a better flavor. First of all, let's look at OnApp Cloud. So OnApp Cloud is a complete cloud platform for service providers. It gives them all of the capabilities you'd expect from something like OpenStack. So all of the automation capabilities that are essential to an infrastructure as a service cloud, but then also provides additional layers on top of that like user and reseller management, billing and metering, and web and mobile user interfaces. It's really built with the service provider in mind. With OnApp Cloud, it's very easy to build your own public cloud service, but also private cloud services as well. And we've designed the product in order to maximize server density. So the idea here is that for you as a service provider to maximize your profitability. Of course, we've designed this to be scalable and resilient. In fact, if you look at the OnApp Cloud platform, and one of the key differences in the cloud functionality is, for example, the ability to provide automated failover between hypervisor servers. So designed to make sure that your customers get the best possible service levels. And there's a high degree of automation throughout the system. I mentioned failover, provisioning, and so on. It's designed to be very efficient, very easy to use. And of course, one of the important things for any service provider is the pricing model. So obviously, you've got a bit of a flavor of that from Cloud Spectator, but the way this is priced is in a simple pay-as-you-grow model. So you only pay for what you use. There are no upfront costs. It's all a simple monthly fee. The next component of the OnApp platform is OnApp CDN. So OnApp CDN consists of around 100 points of presence across 34 countries. We launched this into general availability about 6 months ago, and so you can see there's been some extremely rapid growth. All of those points of presence are contributed by our service provider customers and who have spare infrastructure to contribute to our marketplace. So the OnApp CDN is really the first application of our federated cloud. One of the problems that we're solving with the OnApp CDN is that delivering a CDN is not only an essential thing for end customers who want to achieve global reach for their applications, but also the only way to do that is to resell CDN services from the likes of Akamai, Limelight, which has been an extremely expensive proposition for service providers. The price points are very high, so the margins are low for the service provider. And generally speaking, in order to get a decent price break, you have to commit. You have to buy a significant commit up front. We're trying to change that with our cloud platform. So using this federated marketplace model that we talked about, we are able to take capacity that would be data center capacity that would be sitting there doing nothing otherwise with one service provider, turn it into a CDN point of presence, and allow other service providers to use that as a CDN POP, all managed, all completely managed and transparent. So what this means is that service providers are able to generate new CDN revenue streams with decent margins. They can get better reach than legacy CDNs. So OnApp CDN is, as we said, across 100 points of presence already, and that will continue to grow extremely rapidly. Of course, you can use your own infrastructure. So where you have your own data centers, you can set up points of presence in those. So again, there's a cost saving to be had there. Where you have spare infrastructure that you're able to contribute to the marketplace, you can monetize it by allowing other service providers to piggyback onto that POP. And indeed, it's possible to create entirely virtual CDNs where you have no infrastructure of your own, but you simply buy capacity from the marketplace. And best of all, this is fully integrated out of the box with OnApp Cloud, including all of the billing, and metering, so allows you to get up and running extremely quickly. The final product that I wanted to talk about was our new storage product. This is currently in beta, and really it's currently in beta, so we're just in the process of getting this out to market. What is it? It's a distributed SAN for cloud providers. One of the things that we've realized with all of the clouds that we've deployed for our service provider customers is that one of the biggest obstacles to deploying cloud is storage. It's the SAN. The reasons for that are because of scalability, because of the crazy costs involved in traditional SAN products, and the suitability of those to a heavily virtualized cloud environment. So what we've created is a highly efficient, high-performance SAN that uses the empty drive bays sitting in your hypervisor servers, combines them together, into a distributed block storage capability. So with OnApp Storage, we allow you to use whatever types of disks that you like. So anything from SATA to SSD. So it allows you to create tiered storage very, very simply. It's completely decentralized because it's sitting across all of your hypervisor servers. And one of the great benefits of that is that you don't have the bottlenecks that you traditionally get with storage area networks. You're not going to get controller bottlenecks. Instead, because your storage is distributed across the environment, there is no single bottleneck that exists. Very importantly, this again is a pay-as-you-go capability. So all you do is add more. You can just add more disks to your spare drives on your hypervisor, to your spare drive bays on your hypervisor servers, and you're adding more capacity. As your cloud service grows and you add more hypervisor servers, you continue to add more disks, and your storage pool will grow. So it's an extremely easy and efficient way to build your cloud service on enterprise class storage. So in conclusion, when we look at the difference between implementing open source versus turnkey cloud, I think some of the key things to consider are, first of all, time to market. In the cloud market, things move extremely quickly, and we think it's important to get to market as fast as possible. So that's why we have developed our product to be extremely fast to get started with, all the way down to skinnable, customizable user interfaces. The alternative with open source products is to spend a lot of time integrating together several components in order to make the thing work. Secondly, total cost of ownership. It's important to look beyond free. So whereas the price point for open source looks attractive, once you add in the additional costs of 24/7, 365 support, of integration, and so on, then obviously it starts to the business case starts to look more shaky. It's important to think about the range of integrated capabilities. So if you want to add in, for example, a content delivery network and make sure that that's fully integrated with your cloud service, how easy is that? Is it a question of pressing a button, or is it a question of another few months of integration work? And indeed, what are the margins that you can get once you've done that work? Next thing is maturity. We think it's important to go with a cloud product that has been road tested and is out in the market. The OnApp Cloud product is used by over 400 service providers globally, and so we're very confident in its capabilities. Lastly, profitability. I think all of what we've discussed today is comes down to what is it about a cloud service that is going to actually deliver profitability for you as a service provider, and that is entirely what we have built the OnApp platform around, is to ensure that you as a service provider can generate maximum profitability from your basic compute through to the services that you layer on top of that. So I'm going to hand back to Liam, who I believe is going to lead the Q&A.
Okay, Carlson, if you have a slide with like a contact info or anything like that, you could certainly leave that on. There you go. You could leave that one on screen while we do the Q&A. So I think maybe let's just get started with a question that somebody submitted. Sorry, from one of the attendees, which is, I guess, could you go through some of the more popular use cases for the CDN service, or just for CDN in general, I guess, among like cloud customers?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think some of the key use cases there. I mean, if I think about some of the types of application that I mentioned earlier, like media, e-commerce, and so on. Obviously, media is probably the most obvious example where you have large media objects, be they static or streaming media, or indeed live streaming. If your web application is hosted in a data center in New York, that is not going to perform particularly well for someone sitting in Malaysia. So what you want to be able to do is ensure that the content is as close to the end user as is possible. And so what the OnApp CDN service is able to do is ensure that for whichever markets are important to you to serve, your content is going to be accelerated to the maximum extent possible by taking that content as close as possible to the end user. And so, media is a very obvious example where, it's all about media objects, be they photos or videos or whatever it happens to be. But also for things like e-commerce, where, today's e-commerce sites are generally very media heavy and extremely latency sensitive. There are numerous studies done to show how a few hundred milliseconds of latency can impact revenue directly for an e-commerce service. So I think it's these sorts of things. When you're trying to address a global market, you need to ensure content is accelerated for your key markets.
Okay. So another attendee question has to do with, and I'm going to assume this person means that for an existing company that's already a service provider or a hosting service provider. Do you have a recommended size for a setup that would allow them to enter the cloud market in terms of hardware, and possibly maybe if you could share some ideas around what the cost would be?
Yeah, I mean, we provide some recommendations around hardware sizing. I mean, obviously, depending on what sort of platform you choose, that'll be different. However, if you go and visit the OnApp website, there are some good examples of exactly what sort of hardware sizing you should expect to get started with. And indeed, we work with hardware providers like Supermicro and Dell in order to give customers very specific recommendations to get them started quickly. That said, we see customers kicking off their cloud offering with fairly small hardware requirements. So, with as little as 16 cores of processor power in order to kick off a basic cloud service. I think one of the things that's important about the OnApp product is that you can start very small. So if you want to start with 16 cores and scale up as rapidly as you want, then that's entirely possible. It's a matter of how quickly you can get the hardware in the door. We see customers starting with as little as 16 cores. A lot of customers will sort of come in at the sort of 128 sort of level in order to give themselves some headroom, and some will come in much larger. So it's really it really depends on exactly what you're trying to achieve as a service provider. But we can certainly provide anyone with guidelines based on what their requirements are.
Okay, I've got a few more questions here specifically to do with OnApp platform. I guess what hypervisors does OnApp support, and does it support hypervisor conversion for customers?
So we support the OnApp platform supports Zen, KVM, and we're just releasing support for VMware as well. So those are the three key platforms that we support. At the moment, we don't provide tools to convert between those, but yeah, those are the key platforms.
Okay, so this this is a bit of a long question, so you have to bear with me. I'm gonna try to pare it down a little bit, but the person acknowledges this is something that may be covered in your terms of service or your agreements, but he basically would like for you to discuss the sort of the current pricing structure. And sorry, I'm losing the question here. The pricing structure, he puts $10 per core, $100 per cloud per month, and I guess how service providers who were to use or to set up that would sort of be assured that if they make the commitment to OnApp that they won't see the pricing model change down the road, which could affect their profitability.
Sure. So I think one of the really important things about OnApp is that we've come from the service provider market, and we serve the service provider market. Our success is highly dependent because of our pricing model and the fact that customers buy our product on a pay-as-you-go basis. Our customers' success is what drives our success. So it is entirely in our interest to make sure that we are maintaining our pricing at a level that's going to keep our service provider customers profitable. As an example of how we try to make sure that that's the case, the new storage capability that I talked about during the presentation. The way we're actually pricing that is for OnApp Cloud customers. That is actually simply getting bundled into the $10 per core per month pricing that previously existed for just OnApp Cloud. The intention being that we are continually adding new capabilities to OnApp Cloud that will drive down the costs of delivering cloud services and add additional value. Another example of that is in the last release of our product, we added to the OnApp Cloud product a free Anycast DNS service. So service providers can take advantage of our Anycast DNS infrastructure that actually we use separately to manage the CDN capability, but customers can take advantage of that for no additional cost. So we're committed to maintaining the price points that the price points that you see, but also it's very important to us that we continue to add new capabilities within that price point for our customers. So hopefully that gives you an illustration of our commitment to that. That said, if customers are sort of worried about changes in price point, then there are always commercial ways that we can help customers get comfortable with that.
Okay. Sorry. Somebody here said that they were they're familiar with the sort of architecture that is used in OpenStack and CloudStack and other systems with zones and pods and clusters. Would you describe OnApp's architecture or model of architecture as similar, or if not, sort of how does it differ from the OpenStack architecture?
To be honest, I'm not the best person to describe the detail behind the difference between OpenStack's architecture and OnApp's. But whoever it was that posted the question would be very happy to get them in touch with one of our technical experts to actually talk them through that, where the differences and similarities lie.
Okay, so we can address that after the fact. Somebody had a question, and this is something I had sort of written down here, which is that I guess by making it very simple for somebody to spin up a cloud quickly, affordably, presumably one of the results of OnApp becoming popular would be that if I were to spin up a cloud service on OnApp, it would be very similar to a lot of other services out there. Can you talk about ways in which, either hypothetically or things that you've seen customers doing that, hosts are doing to differentiate their on-app-based cloud service from other ones out in the market?
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that's a great question. I just two points I've got on that. One of which is I think one of the really important things when pushing out a cloud service is to remember that the really what we're providing customers is a core set of functionality that's going to give them kind of equivalence or better to the services that they'd be able to get, that an end customer would be able to get through Amazon, for example. One of the by deploying this sort of system that is turnkey, but provides all of the APIs and so on, but provides a whole set of APIs and so on, is that rather than spending time and money integrating a set of things together in order to get to that base level of functionality, instead customers are able to build on top of that platform, and that is where they differentiate. It's kind of like like an iceberg, whereby the 80% of the functionality that sits below the water should be irrelevant to the customer. It kind of it gives you equivalence to Amazon or whatever it is. It's the 20% that sits above the water, which is where you as a service provider should be kind of putting your effort in differentiating, and that's stuff you build on top of OnApp. So our view is strongly to put your time and effort there rather than trying to integrate together a set of components that may give you a slightly different cloud platform. But is that what's going to differentiate you more? A slightly different cloud platform, or a set of clever services or whatever it is on top of that platform? So I would give a couple of examples. A company over in San Francisco, NodeSocket, who are building a Node.js sort of platform as a service capability sitting on top of OnApp. So by using the OnApp platform, they've been able to get to market much more quickly than they would do otherwise. If I look at, I can look at other customers we have. I had one get in touch the other day, who's just implemented a completely solar-powered point of presence that they've added to the OnApp CDN marketplace. So there's differentiation again, a completely green point of presence. Customer down in North Africa, a service provider called Genius. They differentiate their cloud service by being responsive to local needs. So, for example, in North America, in Europe, we're generally speaking fairly comfortable just buying a cloud service over the internet. In the Middle East, it's much more prevalent that people actually want to meet and talk to whoever's going to be providing that service to them. So they've set up offices around Morocco, for example, in order to provide that personal touch to their end customers, but then still have the standardized cloud platform sitting behind it. So there are lots of different ways that cloud service can be differentiated, either through customer service, through differentiation in compliance characteristics or green characteristics, or indeed services that you build on top of the platform. And I think that the key thing here is that is what you do around the cloud platform that's important. I think it's the sort of the nearest analogy I would build to this is kind of if you're implementing a database, for example. If you think that you're going to get massive differentiation by tweaking some of the sort of characteristics of the database itself, versus actually just getting an Oracle database or a MySQL database, or whatever it is, in place and running, then you're probably not focusing on the end user requirement. So that's kind of that's where
that's the parallel I draw. Okay. So somebody's asking if an OnApp-based service can be built on top of existing VMware or Xen-based architecture or infrastructure.
Yes, would be the short answer. It kind of, I guess, it depends would be the slightly longer answer. But assuming it is a fairly standard Xen-based or VMware-based infrastructure, then yes, absolutely. There are some architectural requirements that we strongly suggest customers implement in order to make their cloud service work as effectively as possible. So, for example, making sure that they have segregated management networks and that sort of thing. But all that being said, this should work on top of a fairly standard Xen VMware KVM infrastructure.
Okay. The same person was also asking whether when OnApp creates VMs and other objects, are those when users create those things through the OnApp interface, are those is that changing the name scheme, or do those become things that are only recognizable through OnApp?
When we sit on top of an infrastructure of hypervisors, OnApp takes control of that infrastructure. So any hypervisor servers that are going to be managed by OnApp need to be completely managed by OnApp. So we wouldn't recommend running anything else in parallel on the same infrastructure on the same machines. If that answers the question.
It may. I think you may have future discussions with that particular attendee, because some of their questions are very specific. Somebody asked that when you were demonstrating some of the, you had some screenshots on screen when you were talking about, excuse me, you were showing the interface for the storage
yes.
service, and it looked a little different from the existing OnApp interface. Does that mean that you're going to be releasing a new interface when you release the storage, or updating the interface?
Very good spot, whoever that was. Yes, so we are updating the standard OnApp user interface. Bear in mind that the entire OnApp user interface across all our products is skinnable and rebrandable to a customer's own sort of look and feel and requirements, and as our mobile applications, iOS and Android. Yes, whereas we are updating the look and feel of the user interface, it is of course entirely up to the customer whether they implement their own.
Okay. So somebody had a couple of questions about the CDN, the Federated CDN notion, and I guess can you talk in a little bit more detail about how a participant would go about adding their servers to the CDN, and then also how they could sort of or talk about sort of the security angle and how they could feel comfortable putting their customers' data on somebody else's cloud from this marketplace.
Sure. So the CDN, putting a CDN point of presence onto the marketplace does require some technical due diligence from our side to make sure that the infrastructure is sufficiently spec'd to support a CDN POP. Obviously, we don't obviously want to make sure that people aren't putting infrastructure connected by a wet piece of string to the internet onto the CDN, but it has to be there has to be sufficient hardware and pipes in order to make this work. So we do make sure that we do go through some technical due diligence in order to accept a point of presence into the marketplace, which is a fairly just a short standardized test that we run. Once that's done, then it's up to the customer to decide what price they want to put onto that. They want to put onto that point of presence. so a cost per gigabyte of traffic, and then that's pretty much it. That point of presence will then appear in the marketplace, and other service providers are able to subscribe to that point of presence immediately. So the entire OnApp CDN infrastructure is actually really what the customer is, what someone who's putting a point of presence in place is doing is spinning up some virtual machine infrastructure within their cloud that runs our edge software, our CDN edge software, and that is entirely managed by OnApp. So the service provider themselves don't have access inside that virtual machine. So we handle the security in that way by making sure that OnApp is by making sure that OnApp manages that infrastructure directly. That said, if the customer wants to, if the point of presence provider wants to take down the infrastructure, then that's absolutely fine because they need to burst. We can simply redirect traffic to the next nearest point of presence. So, whereas we manage the infrastructure, it's still in the hands of the service provider to take that point of presence up or down as they require.
Okay. I guess somebody was wondering if OnApp is planning to provide a bare metal provisioning system or ISO images that people could be used to create new servers or hypervisors, etc.
Yes, absolutely. So next week at HostingCon, we're going to be announcing some of the new features that are coming in version 3 of the OnApp product, and one of those new features is going to be a sort of a Pixie boot capability, which will mean that bare metal servers can be managed, brought up from scratch, pretty much by the OnApp system.
Okay. I guess I mean I had a couple people. There's a couple people asking, sort of, I guess, if you have contributors to the Federated Cloud from specific countries. I mean, specifically somebody asked about India, and specifically somebody asked about Greece. I think that there are there's just some curiosity around, how broad do you want it to go? How much need is there for new contributors? Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think one of the values of a federated cloud infrastructure is that it hits as many countries as possible. Especially for a CDN capability, it is important to be able to have a direct presence in as many countries as is possible. Points of presence in those specific countries, India, Greece, I don't have at my fingertips. I'm guessing that we almost certainly do in India. I'm not sure about Greece. I'd have to have a look. Essentially, we're always looking for new providers to come on board with to come on board and contribute infrastructure to the Federation, especially as we go forward. And I guess one important aspect of that is if you look at sort of some of the major population centers, London, New York, San Francisco, etc., we actually have multiple points of presence in those geographies, which does add additional resilience into the CDN infrastructure. So, for example, if in San Francisco a point of presence goes down, and not that there's been any recent news about availability zones from certain cloud providers going down in that region, then other points of presence can take over, which means that the CDN and going forward, the rest of the federated infrastructure is extremely resilient.
Okay. So I guess there were a couple questions about some of the distinction you were making earlier between open source and the turnkey and specifically OnApp, I guess the conversation obviously sort of naturally veered toward OnApp because those are a lot of the questions that you're going to be able to answer. But I guess somebody was looking for sort of a distinction between whether you'd think that OnApp is probably the better solution for somebody for a hosting company whose expertise lies more in the marketing area, whereas maybe there's more opportunity for a hosting company whose expertise is really in the development or R&D type of area with something like OpenStack?
Actually, someone just checked for me on your previous question. We do have points of presence in Athens in Greece, so we do have one there as well. Sorry. So to come back to the current question, I mean, obviously, for a service provider that is in that terminology, sort of more marketing focused, then a turnkey product is always going to be preferable. There's kind of no question there. For a service provider that's more development focused, it really depends. Kind of comes back to one of the things we were discussing earlier, but it really depends how. It really depends how they think they're going to differentiate themselves from the competition. So, if they think they have a particular slant on how to deliver a cloud management platform, then that's great. And there are service providers out there that do differentiate themselves in that way. And so I think of I don't know, someone like GoGrid or Cloud Sigma. However, I think that if you asked someone from I don't know, GoGrid, for example, in a heart of hearts, would they do it again, or would they take something off the shelf and instead put their effort into building capabilities on top of that off-the-shelf product, be it OnApp or OpenStack or whatever it is, then I think that they might have to think quite hard. So if a service provider has a good development capability in house, I'd certainly think about is that best spent trying to get a toolkit effectively up and running, admittedly with all the customizability that might bring, or do they want to build new services on top of what is a fairly standardized capability in infrastructure as a service capability, in which case I would suggest that they went with something like OnApp and put their effort into building those additional services on top. So yeah, no simple way to answer it, but it really depends how that service provider strategically thinks they're going to differentiate themselves.
Okay, here's one. Sorry, I guess aside from VPS.net, and I'm not sure if this is a question that you can answer, but it's very possible that it is. Other than VPS.net, can you give an example of a large service provider that is currently using OnApp and sort of roughly how many VMs they're running on it?
So, I mean, a couple of you're looking specifically for some larger service providers. I guess a couple of examples would be Pier 1 over in the US, would be GMO, who's one of the largest hosters in Japan. I think they are the largest hoster in Japan, base their cloud services on OnApp. So there's a couple of examples. If you go to the OnApp website, there's actually under the customer section, there's a significant list of customers and actually a load of really good videos. I say that because I was the interviewer, but there's a couple of good videos that have customers talking about their specific experience with OnApp, what they've been able to do, and what they've been able to do with the product, and that spans a range of geographies: US, South America, Europe, and so on. So yeah, there's a few examples there for you.
Great, thanks. So somebody's saying if a service provider is if a service provider is looking to start from scratch with OnApp right now, unless they want to do a centralized SAN, would it be better for them to wait for OnApp Storage to launch? And also, do you have an idea of when that's going to release?
again, that's sort of that's really at the disposition of the service provider. I mean, we try to make sure that despite the fact that we are providing our own storage technology, customers may have something that they're perfectly happy with, in which case that's great, and we'll simply integrate with that technology. Obviously, there are some significant advantages to going with the OnApp Storage product from a cost perspective. The OnApp Storage product will be available, will be generally available sometime in the second half of this year. So I can't give you an exact date at this point. It is in public beta right now, but yeah. So it kind of, I guess, if I was to answer the easiest way to answer the question is that I would suggest looking at exactly how quickly the service provider wants to go live with that service. If they need to do it quickly, then I'd suggest choosing an alternative technology. If they can wait, then I definitely suggest waiting for the OnApp Storage product. There is a middle ground, which is using the OnApp Cloud product. It's possible for service providers to simply use local storage, to use local storage on hypervisors, which you could consider a possible stopgap solution. Obviously, obviously you're not using a SAN technology, therefore you do forfeit some capabilities, like, for example, the ability to automatically fail over between hypervisors. So there are some downsides to that, but it is possibly a stopgap depending on what the service provider is trying to achieve.
Okay, so as a follow-up to that last question, if somebody were to launch today with OnApp and some other type of storage solution, and then wanted to, after the launch, transition onto the OnApp Storage, I mean, is that going to be an easy migration?
Well, without knowing more about the situation, it's a kind of a difficult question to answer. I mean, I guess it would be the same as migrating between any two SANs. I mean, obviously it's entirely possible to technically it's entirely possible to do without knowing the detail of it. It's slightly difficult to answer, but certainly something that our team would be very happy to look into and provide a slightly better answer than that, with a little bit more detail behind exactly what the situation would be there.
Okay, well, I think that you may have an opportunity to speak specifically with that person.
Great.
I've noticed we're a few minutes past the hour now. I think probably a good time to wrap things up. I'd like to thank everyone for attending and for hanging out right to the end. I'd like to thank everyone for submitting a ton of questions. We usually don't get nearly as many questions in a webinar. I'd like to thank John and Ben for hanging out through all of the very specific OnApp questions. And thanks to Costin and all of you guys for offering some great insight into obviously what is a really key challenge facing a lot of service providers right now. So that will wrap things up. And I'd like to remind you also, if you did submit a question that didn't get answered, you can rest assured that we do have a record of it, and you will sort of have someone follow up with you. And that there will be an archived copy of this webinar online next week at thewhir.com/webinar. So thanks very much, guys, and have a great day.